Welcome back to another deep dive. If you're the kind of person who is always looking for that next big aha moment, but you really don't want to get bogged down by just endless information overload, you are definitely in the right place today.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a really great one today.
We do. Today's source material is actually an episode of a Thai program. It's called the Mindful Breakdown. And it introduces this truly wild paradox right out of the gate.
It really is a paradox. It completely messes with how we usually think about reaching our goals.
Right. So Buddhist philosophy tells you to, stay perfectly grounded in the present moment. Just sit there and accept things exactly as they are.
But at the exact same time, you are supposed to be aggressively striving for this ultimate future goal, Nirvana, total spiritual liberation.
Exactly. And that's the hook here. Like, how on earth do you achieve the ultimate prize when the fundamental rule of the practice is that, well, you aren't actually allowed to want it?
Right. It completely breaks the conventional equation of effort and reward.
I mean, we're all conditioned to believe that, applying brute force to a problem inevitably gets you a result.
Yeah, you put in the mechanical work, you get the payoff. It's very linear.
But the source points out that when you step into the landscape of the human mind, that linear transaction it completely falls apart.
It really does. The harder you squeeze the mind to produce an outcome, the more that outcome kind of just slips through your fingers.
Okay, let's unpack this because it reminds me of trying to fall asleep the night before a ridiculously early flight. You know that feeling?
Oh, yeah, the absolute worst.
Right. You look at the clock, you realize you only have like 4 hours left, and you think, I need to be asleep right now.
And that aggressive desire to fall asleep is the exact biological trigger that keeps you awake.
Yes. Your heart rate elevates, cortisol spikes, your brain starts racing. The actual act of forcing the state actively prevents it from happening.
That insomnia loop is, well, it's the perfect modern parallel to the trap of seeking enlightenment. The mindful breakdown tackles this head on.
Yeah, they make a really crucial distinction that I found fascinating.
Right. They explain that achieving a state of presence isn't actually the final destination. Sitting on a cushion and feeling peaceful, that's not the finish line.
No, it's not. Mindfulness is categorized merely as a tool. It's a magnifying glass.
And what are you looking at through that magnifying glass? You're observing the impermanence of the body and the mind.
So you're not just passively watching your breath. You are scrutinizing these micro fluctuations of reality.
Exactly. You're watching thoughts arise and vanish. You're feeling physical sensations shift. You are gathering hard data that absolutely nothing is stable.
Which is how you exhaust the brain's pattern recognition system, right? Because the human brain naturally wants to hold on to things.
It does. It wants to hold on to concepts, identities, physical comforts.
But by forcing the mind to observe through that magnifying glass that everything is constantly decaying and generating, the mind eventually just gets weary.
Yeah, it realizes the futility of trying to grasp water, and only when it gets truly fed up with the effort of holding on does it finally drop its attachment.
That reframes the concept of nirvana completely for me. I mean, it's usually depicted as this mystical destination, right? Like a mountaintop you climb to.
But stripped of the mythology, nirvana is simply the precise physiological and psychological moment the mind completely lets go of attachment, right in the present.
But wait, if nirvana is the ultimate goal, how are you supposed to get there without wanting it? I mean, trying to fall asleep is one thing, but this is enlightenment.
This raises an important question, and it's the core of the trap of wanting.
Right, because wanting creates an ego.
Exactly. When a practitioner sits down to meditate with the active desire to reach a deep meditative state, what's known as ashana, they are instantly generating an ego.
Because the thought, I want to be enlightened, requires an I.
You hit the nail on the head. It reinforces the very self that the practice is trying to dissolve.
So the desire creates this rigid tension. The mind grasps at the goal, and because it grasps, it fails.
But to get the ultimate prize, you genuinely have to not care about getting it.
Which is maddening. You can't just accidentally stumble into nirvana while, waiting in line for a bus. There has to be some pursuit.
Yeah, and that psychological knot is why the ancient texts pivot from abstract philosophy to grounded historical accounts. They knew the theory was just too abstract.
Which brings us to the case study in the program. The story of Ananda.
Right. Ananda was one of the Buddha's most prominent disciples, his personal attendant for decades, actually.
And he found himself facing just an astronomical level of pressure. It was the eve of the Sangyana, right?
Yes, the first major Buddhist council. This was the most critical administrative and spiritual gathering in their history. They were meant to codify all the teachings.
But Ananda, despite being so close to the Buddha, hadn't yet achieved full enlightenment. He wasn't an arhat.
And he desperately needed to hit that spiritual rank to participate fully in the council the next morning.
He was on a literal overnight deadline for ultimate spiritual liberation.
Talk about pressure.
Seriously. So he goes into absolute overdrive. He pulls a spiritual all-nighter. He's engaging in this relentless, aggressive walking meditation.
Pushing his physical body and his mental focus to the absolute limit.
But in our modern hustle culture, we're taught that if you just grind harder, you get the result. Ananda was doing everything right. He was putting in the hours, avoiding distractions. Why was he failing so spectacularly?
What's fascinating here is that he was failing precisely because of the mechanism of his desire.
The sheer force of wanting to become an arhat before sunrise built this massive wall of ego.
Exactly. He was terrified of failing, terrified of being excluded from the council. That anxiety, that intense craving for the result, it created an impenetrable barrier of tension.
It's like trying to force yourself to sleep while blasting loud music in your own mind.
Perfect analogy. He pushed until his executive function was just completely tapped out. He reached a point of total physical and mental exhaustion.
He literally couldn't take another step. So he accepted defeat. He withdrew all the forced effort, gave up the goal of being enlightened for the council, and decided to just go lie down.
And the physical geometry of what happens next is what makes this account so vital.
Yeah, this part is wild.
The texts document that it didn't happen 10 minutes after he lay down, or the next morning when he woke up. It happened in the split second of transition.
His head had not yet touched the pillow,
Mm.
and his feet had just left the ground. He was literally suspended in midair,
Wow.
right? In that infinitesimal gap, he possessed zero desire. He had fully abandoned the goal.
Yet his mind was still incredibly sharp and present from the hours of intense preparation.
And in that flash of letting go, without an ego grasping for an outcome, he achieved enlightenment instantly.
It sounds like a legend, right? Like a poetic metaphor about surrender.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If you look closely at the mechanics of that midair moment, Ananda was executing a flawless neurological process.
Yeah, what he experienced spiritually is identical to what modern cognitive psychologists call the incubation effect.
Which means the brain's architecture for generating breakthroughs hasn't changed in 2.5 millennia.
Not at all. Cognitive science maps Ananda's spiritual journey directly onto the 4 stages of human insight.
Okay, let's walk through those. The first stage is preparation.
Right, the heavy lifting phase, loading the program, so to speak. In an office, this is crunching the numbers, reading the reports, staring at the raw data of a complex problem.
And for Ananda, it was his decades of studying the Dharma and that final, hardcore night of meditation. You are forcing the brain to accumulate all the necessary puzzle pieces.
Which inevitably leads to the second stage, frustration.
You've hit a wall.
Exactly. When the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center, works overtime, it fatigues.
And the body actually registers the inability to solve the problem as a mild threat, which triggers the release of stress hormones, like cortisol.
And cortisol is designed for survival, not lateral thinking. It narrows your focus to the immediate threat.
Your brain acts like a harsh spotlight, illuminating only the most obvious linear data points.
So that aggressive desire to find the answer literally blocks the neural pathways required to make creative associations. You get tunnel vision.
That biological roadblock is why the third stage is completely non-negotiable. Incubation.
You have to shut off the spotlight.
Yeah. When Ananda finally surrendered and went to bed, he deactivated his exhausted prefrontal cortex. Dropping the forced effort allows the brain to switch operational modes.
It activates the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN is so fascinating. It's this web of interacting brain regions that only truly comes online when we stop focusing on the outside world.
It's like turning off that harsh spotlight and turning on the house lights. Instead of looking at one specific spot, the brain starts quietly illuminating the entire room.
Functionally, the DMN links the hippocampus, where memories are stored, with areas responsible for abstract thought and self-reflection.
And because the rigid, cortisol-driven attachment to the answer is gone, your subconscious is finally free to wander.
It starts connecting disparate, seemingly unrelated pieces of data that you accumulated during the preparation phase,
Right. It's working on the problem precisely because you stop demanding that it solve the problem.
which triggers the fourth and final stage. Eureka.
The flash of insight.
The DMN successfully connects the dots. The subconscious bypasses the stressed conscious mind, and the answer suddenly illuminates.
Ananda's feet leave the ground, the tension evaporates, and the puzzle solves itself.
The biological mechanism is identical, whether you are trying to write a complex algorithm or achieve spiritual liberation. The brain just requires the release of tension to synthesize complex information.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, the Thai program highlights a really fundamental distinction in the end result of these two types of eureka moments.
Yeah, this is a brilliant distinction. A worldly eureka moment, like cracking a marketing strategy or inventing a new tool, it gives us an answer that reinforces our ego.
Right. It makes us smarter, more capable, more successful. It adds to the self.
But the Dharma Eureka, the moment in Nirvana, yields an insight that completely dissolves the ego.
The realization of absolute impermanence doesn't make the self smarter. It makes the self disappear entirely.
It leaves only pure, unattached presence.
Yeah.
One builds the architect up, the other dismantles the architect.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? Understanding the neurochemistry of how the brain lets go shouldn't just be an exercise in abstract philosophy. We need to translate this into a tangible tool.
Right. How do you actually use this to solve a complex problem at work today?
We can weaponize this biology. We can manipulate our own neurochemistry throughout the workday to engineer these breakthroughs.
And the key is learning how to balance that intense accumulation of data with the physiological release required for the default mode network to function.
The program lays out a cyclical, four-step, practical framework. Let's break it down. Step 1 is the intensity phase.
You don't start by letting go. You start by leaning in entirely. You block out 45 to 90 minutes of unbroken, intense focus.
You analyze the problem, read the documents, map out the variables. You are deliberately stressing the prefrontal cortex to load the subconscious with raw material.
You have to generate the friction. Because without the intense preparation, there is literally no data for the brain to process later.
Okay, but step 2 is where I think most high achievers completely fail, recognizing the wall.
Oh, absolutely. You must become hyper-aware of your own internal neurochemistry.
You have to feel the cortisol hit. The exact moment your thoughts start looping or you feel that tight frustration in your chest, your executive function is tapped out.
The spotlight is narrowed way too much.
And pushing harder at this exact moment isn't working hard. It's actively damaging your ability to solve the problem. You have to stop immediately.
Which initiates the critical third step, incubation and release.
You must physically and mentally step away from the problem. The goal is to activate the default mode network.
You go for a walk, you wash the dishes, you water the plants in your office.
But wait, taking a shower or watering a fern when you are on a tight corporate deadline. If my boss needs a major strategy document by 3 p.m., stepping away to look at foliage just looks like avoiding the work because it's hard.
I get that.
Like, how do we distinguish between true incubation and just procrastinating?
Well, it becomes procrastination if the conscious mind hasn't actually let go.
Oh, okay.
Watering the plants while secretly agonizing over the spreadsheet in your head is just continuing the stress response in a different room.
It's still gripping the problem.
Exactly. The DMN cannot activate if the prefrontal cortex is still desperately grasping at the problem. You have to anchor your conscious mind entirely in the simple present task.
Feel the temperature of the water. Notice the texture of the leaves.
And the program uses a really brilliant phrase to describe the relationship between the hard work and the rest. They say, you cannot incubate an empty egg.
I love that. You cannot incubate an empty egg.
Right. If you haven't done the 90 minutes of brutal, focused intensity in step 1, stepping away isn't letting go. It's just running away.
Yeah. The intense preparation must happen first. Once the egg is full of data, stepping away isn't lazy. It is a required biological step for synthesis.
It's shifting from stressful, forced effort to a state of relaxed diligence.
Relaxed diligence. You've planted the seed, you've watered the soil, and now you have to step back. You can't pull on the sprout to make it grow faster,
No, you'll just rip it out of the ground.
which sets up the final step, capturing.
Yes. When the DMN completes the connection, the answer will flash into your conscious mind. But these eureka moments are notoriously fragile.
Because the brain wasn't actively hunting for the thought. Right. So the thought can vanish just as quickly as it arrived.
Just like Ananda in midair, the moment arrives when you least expect it.
So you have to engineer your environment to grab it before the ego and the stress rush back in. You need a notebook open on your desk, or a voice memo app ready on your phone during your walk.
When the flash hits, you document it instantly.
So from a baffling spiritual paradox to a historical all-nighter, right down to the cortisol and neural pathways of the human brain, the through line is just undeniable.
Forcing the issue with desperate, aggressive desire guarantees failure.
The mind is not a muscle you can simply tear and rebuild with brute force.
Yeah.
Whether you are an ancient monk seeking the ultimate nature of reality or a designer trying to crack a massive creative project, true wisdom only arrives when we abandon the struggle.
We have to do the heavy lifting, load the brain with every piece of the puzzle, and then we have to have the courage to stop tensing up.
Drop the timeline, release the ego's demand for an answer, and root ourselves gently in the present moment. Thank you for joining us on this tailored exploration today.
Yeah.
Just remember the power of letting go.
And it leaves you with a really provocative final thought to mull over.
Oh.
If our greatest creative breakthroughs in the modern world and our deepest spiritual awakenings in antiquity both happen precisely in the exact moment when our ego is shut down and the I stops trying, it makes you wonder, are our best ideas actually ours at all? Or, once we finally shut off that harsh spotlight and get out of our own way, are we just tuning into a frequency of answers that was broadcasting all along?